there, I will explain to you how the concepts of human nature, it is general assumptions about other people which we make, can impact our decisions. Imagine that you assume that people are egoistic, so you probably don't really trust people and are less tempted to communicate with them. On the contrary, if you assume that the person is altruistic, you will be more likely to communicate, do favors for people, and try to organize some actions to help other people. This example brings us to the first dimension of this concept of human nature, which is presented on the diagram. So there are people who think that people are generally more egoistic than altruistic, and people who think the opposite. The next dimension tells us that there are people who assume that others are more emotional than rational. If you assume this, it is easy to see that when selling a product, you will accent the emotional rather than rational aspect of a product. No wonder that some advertisers pose half-naked women on cars instead of accentuating the car's price, efficiency, etc. As a policymaker in times of the coronavirus, you will not only accentuate the profitability of a particular solution, staying home and avoiding paying a fine, but try to show by presenting nurses as doctors or old people dying the harm you may cause by not obeying the health guidelines. So the third very important dimension is whether a person is autonomous or heteronomous. What does it mean? In the differentiation introduced by Piaget, I described the differences between autonomous morality and heteronomous morality. Now, if you assume that people behave heteronomously, oriented more towards an existing norm than one's own judgment, you would, as a policymaker, try to change the circumstances and existing norms in the groups, communities, and society. The next dimension refers to the assumption as to whether a person's character is shaped by nature or by culture. If you believe in the role of the culture, you will, as policymaker, for instance, invest in education and other social initiatives which may lead to changes in the behavior of certain groups. As manager, you will invest in developing a culture of the company which may lead to positive changes in the behavior of other persons. Or on the contrary, when you believe in the role of nature, you will just search for ideal people for the position through a selection process. The combination of all these dimensions result in 4 concepts of human nature. Each concept is characterized by one of the poles of these 4 dimensions. So, economic man, known in economics as Homo economicus, corresponds with our belief that people are egoistic, made so by nature, autonomous and rational. In the Homo economicus concept, we assume that it is instrumental rationality, what means that a person optimizes the means to reach a given goal, rather than valuing goals if they correspond with some general norms or values. Another model is a humanistic one, which has its background in Maslow's theory of human motivation. You probably know such a model in management. It's McGregor's Y model, which is opposed to the X model, economic man. Here we assume autonomy and rationality, but the latter is one oriented on goals which correspond with some general humanistic values, not just optimality. Furthermore, we assume here that people are altruistic, so eager to share their knowledge and ideas with others, and are made so by their culture, so they can be motivated for excellence by a supportive and creative environment, culture. A social model assumes that people are not only shaped by the culture, but are heteronomous as well. So it makes more sense, according to such an assumption, to focus on process in the group rather than on individuals. We assume that people are emotional too, so by designing rules, we would probably consider the emotional channel discussed before. In assuming social altruism, let us think about designing relations on the basis of reciprocity, paying attention to the fairness aspects. It is a model found in management relatively often and is described by Shine, 1970 organizational psychology. So, last but not least, we have the imperfect man. This model does not find many applications in management or policy, but rather in psychiatry or psychotherapy, as it is a model shaped by Sigmund Freud in psychoanalysis. He assumed that the person is shaped by nature, is egoistic, is heteronomous, and emotional. Summarizing, there are 4 dimensions which we usually use when thinking about human nature. As a result, we get 8 adjectives describing persons, which build again 4 types of human nature, each type being characterized by 4 adjectives, 1 from each dimension. The assumptions we have about other people have an impact on our behavior and are used in various management models. Thank you for your attention.